Here we go. You all set? Okay. Welcome to the November 2020 Chaffee County Commissioners Virtual Hybrid Forum. My name is Scott Hartman. I'm the Voter Service Coordinator with the League of Women Voters here in Chaffee County. We're going to start off by pledging allegiance to the flag. You can join me. Standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have tonight with us two candidates for District 1, Keith Baker and Bonnie Davis, and one candidate for District 2, Greg Fellow. Unfortunately, just this afternoon, I received an email from Hannah saying that she's had an issue with a family issue and was going to have to go out of town. And so she's unable to be here today. We asked her to send a surrogate, at least to do an introductory statement, but she felt it was too late to get that done. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Box, who is our moderator for the evening, and we'll get started. Bob.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Well, good evening. I'm Bob Box, and moderator for the Chaffee County Commissioners Candidate Forum. I'd like to welcome and thank Dr. Davis, Greg Fell, Chief Baker for taking time to be here with us and give your thoughts to our voters. And to that end, thank you, voters, for taking the time to learn about these candidates. Now, we've got your attention, time for a plug. This is the League of Women Voters. And this is our 100th year of this year. We invite you to join us. Membership's open to all and obviously not for women only. Given that our mission is empowering voters and defending democracies, that's something all of us can do. We're a 501c3, nonpartisan political organization. Never support or oppose candidates or political positions, or parties, excuse me. We do study issues, and many times we take a position on the issues because our goal is to provide education to the voter. Okay, first some announcement. Vote. We hope that that's said to you a lot and drives home, because your vote is going to determine what happens in this county and in this country for many years. You'll be receiving your mail-in ballots the week of October 9. So be sure to vote and return your ballot so that they are back to the county commissioner by 7 p.m. November 3. Now, again, that has to be with the commissioner, not in the mailbox. It has to be with the commissioner. So if there's any question that you need a little extra time to mail it, then mail it early. But you can put it in a ballot box. And we have two of them in the county. One is at the Salida Courthouse, and the other is at the BV Courthouse Annex, where they could be dropped off. Vote 401. Is that us down here? I think it is. All right. It's an award-winning website and one stop to register, check your registration, and learn about each candidate and issues. Millions of voters use it in the last election, and we think that it's an excellent format for you and for them. You can also use it to understand the pros and cons of 10 of Colorado ballot issues. The League provides pamphlets on that at your local library if you'd like to pick them up, and places of business. Or you can go to the League of Women Voters website to pick that up. And for that end, we want to thank High Country, Collegiate Peaks, and TBK Banks for sponsoring these pamphlets. The ideas and viewpoints expressed here tonight are not those of the League of Women Voters of Chaffee County. However, the content of the forum is the property of Chaffee County League and may not be used by any campaign or person without written permission. The forum is being recorded and will be aired on our website.
Okay.
We'd like to thank the public for submitting the questions, and we are delighted to receive so many more than we can possibly get at tonight. League committee did go over all your questions, edit them for clarity, and where there was duplication, condense them down to one clear question. If your question doesn't get asked tonight, please take advantage of your candidates and just get hold of them personally and let them know what the question is. And I'm sure they will be glad to give you a personal response. Each of our candidates is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement. And when we get around to the questions, they'll have 1 minute to answer each question. Mary Helen Dunn is our timer, and she will know when each time is up. She'll give some clues along the way. We ask the candidates not to interrupt each other, and please do not use notes during the questioning segment of the forum. We want to hear what you think, not what was written down. Candidates will then have 1 minute for each question statement. Okay, any questions? Yeah, okay, let's hear from Greg Felt, your opening statement, sir.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to the League of Women Voters, both here and throughout the country, for sponsoring these types of events. I also want to thank the voters for electing me 4 years ago and trusting me with this job. It's so much more than I think anybody can imagine until you get into it. And each term, I'm sure, has its own character. You know, elections are about choosing a candidate to fill an office, but they're also an opportunity for the community to talk about issues and alternatives and to move towards decisions about our next move. It's truly a community conversation in the truest sense. 4 years ago, when I was in this same position of campaigning, I said that we needed to have a community conversation about conservation. Little did I know that would evolve into Envision Chaffee County, which 1,500 of you took part in over nearly a year of deep thought and conversation. And from that, we got the 1A ballot measure, Common Ground program, the Community Foundation, the Next Generation Community Wildfire Protection Plan, Recreation and Balance, conservation easements. A whole lot came out of that conversation. And really that drove back to the campaign. 4 years ago, we talked a lot about water, and in the last several years, I've been appointed by judges to the Southeastern Colorado Water Conservancy District Board, and the governor appointed me to the Colorado Water Conservation Board to represent the Arkansas Basin there. 4 years ago, we talked about the need for affordable housing and a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. Today, Keith and I and Rusty approved that amended agreement, and tonight Salida is hearing it. Next week, Buena Vista will be hearing it. And I am very glad that I got with it right out of the chute, because little did we know that the last year would be spent mostly on the Decker fire and COVID-19. So it's been a really busy 4 years, and I look forward to spending the next 4 years just as busy working for your interests. Thank you.
Okay, Keith.
Good evening, and thank you to the League, and thank you to everyone who's watching at home. I am Keith Baker. I grew up in rural Northwest Georgia, and I went straight through school and entered the Navy right after college. And I served a 23-year Navy career, from which I retired about 20 years ago and came straight to Colorado because I had always dreamt of living out here and wanted to make my new civilian life here. After a brief stay in Colorado Springs and getting into the outdoor retail business, the Trailhead in BV became available, so my wife and I bought it and moved on up here and realized our dream of living in the mountains. I have a proven track record of public service my entire life, and I quickly became engaged in civic life here in BV, and after a decent interval became involved in public life after I had a sense of what was going on, rather than coming in like a bull in a china shop and trying to assert myself too quickly. I wanted to learn the community and establish myself before I got involved, and became involved with the Chaffee County Visitors Bureau after I'd been here for about a year, and served on the Bureau for 3 years and was the chairman. And then after that, ran for BV Town Trustee and served 8 years as a BV Town Trustee. And following that, of course, is when I ran for County Commissioner 4 years ago and was elected. So in that interim time frame of the last 4 years, I've worked on issues like public housing and affordable housing, attainable housing, the environment, as Greg mentioned. I've worked on a variety of other issues like forest health, watershed health, and what have you. Something I forgot to mention before I got on the board, I was the executive director of Friends of Browns Canyon and saw that through to successful designation as a national monument. So thank you very much.
Bonnie Davis.
Well, thank you all so much for inviting us and having us here during this COVID adventure of candidacy. I am a libertarian candidate, and which confuses a lot of people. They don't know what is a libertarian. But I'm for individual freedom, which includes free association and freedom of choice. I believe people have the right to secure their life, liberty, and their property. I believe people should be free to do what they want to do as long as they harm no others. And to many, it would surprise them that that also includes protecting the environment. But anyway, I'm running for county commissioner because I have a concern for people's individual freedoms. I have a concern about government transparency, and I believe I want to protect our community. I have a background in transportation and logistics. I make decisions based on data as a data analyst, and I'm an effective leader because I've led many teams that have contributed to the success of not only my organization, but their organization. These attributes, I believe, make me a strong candidate for county commissioner.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Well, a couple of procedural things that I hope will be helpful here. Notice we're taking off and putting on our masks, and that was at the recommendation of Chaffee County Health. Is that correct? Scott talked to them, so that will be our process here. When a speaker is talking, they may take that down at that time. Also, with the questioning, we're going to start with Keith. He drew the ace on this and come down and then go back through. And the process I'm going to use is start at one end, come this way. I'll probably ask you a second time and go that way. The point being that whoever is following isn't in the position of always having to open up or always having to respond to the person that was just ahead of them. So we're going to move it back and forth a little bit that way. I'll read the question. Where it's a simple question, I'll read it once. And if it's a more complex one or involves having two parts, then I may well repeat it. You can always ask, and you can say the question again, okay? So the point being that it's convenient to you as the person who's responding. Okay, well, these all came from our citizens here in Chaffee County, and so this is what's on their mind. And some of what we did in this order is when we saw people asking the same question a lot, we moved those questions up to the top. And I think some of them won't be very surprising here because they're the same ones we think about too. Opening question regards water. Now, Lake, Fremont, and Chaffee counties are facing a severe drought that threatens our very existence. As a commissioner, what tools will you use to protect the county's water? Keith, you first.
Well, our land use code is pretty specific about water requirements, and a lot of these come from state statute. And we have to make sure that any development addresses the water requirements that they have. If they need to get augmentation from the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District, that they're able to do that if they have to get well, or if they need to get on to municipal water supplies, if they have the proximity to do that. But we have to make sure that they are, in fact, protecting that resource, or that we're protecting that resource, because water is a finite resource. It's a survival need. And if we run out, if people can't have any to drink and to do anything else, then that's a bad thing, bad situation to be in. We can also make sure that we're doing everything we can to husband the water that we get so that none of it goes to waste. Things like aquifer recharge and making sure that our land management practices foster all those. Thank you.
Greg, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. There's two ways I would look at answering this question. One is, what can I do specifically with my authority as a commissioner? And then what can I do as Greg Felt, County Commissioner? In the latter case, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, I serve on the board of Southeastern and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. I also serve on the board of the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District. Water's really been kind of my thing for many years, since I started working as a guide and outfitter many years ago. And so I would be using those entities, the authorities that they have and the connections they have, to help our municipalities and to help our county government find their way through the water challenges that we face, develop incentives for landowners to keep the water on their land. When we're talking about folks with irrigation rights, we've developed the Heritage Water Subdivision exemption that allows many of our residents to keep their exempt wells when they are dividing their property. And I would continue to support conservation easements that include tying water to the land.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Bonnie.
Well, the Colorado Constitution states that water belongs to the people. And it kind of goes into a bunch of blah, blah, blah about why it belongs to the people. And then the Supreme Court recently ruled in a case, and because I can't look at notes, but they ruled too that water belongs to the people. So some of the laws concerning Colorado's law were, written after and have been changed. I think as a commissioner, I would, just as Greg said, work with a team of people, a group that are in the water conservation business, and then try to escalate that up to the government to make a change to the overall existing laws. It's very complicated.
Thank you. Number 2, regarding the pandemic. Here we are. Because of COVID, and what we now know, was a one-size-fits-all approach appropriate for closing businesses beginning in March? Second part of the question is, would you do anything differently? And explain. Okay, so Keith, was the one-size-fits-all approach appropriately for closing businesses beginning in March?
I can go ahead and answer, but I thought we were going to come this way.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You're exactly right. I'm still breaking into this. Thank you for keeping me on track. Okay, Bonnie, your question.
The one-size-fits-all approach, I think overall the federal government did a job of directing that to the governorship so that they could decide what was appropriate for their individual, states, versus mandating across the courts that, everyone needed to, the one-size-fits-all approach. So Governor Polis overall, I think, did a very good job in managing the COVID crisis. So I liked his overall, and I think the commissioners, I've complimented them before. They got the mandate down from Polis's office, and they did a very good job of controlling the situation. The current commissioners did.
Okay, you have a few seconds. What would you do?
Well, sorry.
As a commissioner?
I would have done exactly what the current commissioners did. Like I said, they did a very good job, given, trying to stop the traffic from coming in, people to come in. I mean, there's only so much you can do. I think I would have done exactly what they did.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, Greg, over to you.
Thank you. One size doesn't fit all. We see that both across the spectrum of different types of businesses, and we see it within the various business sectors themselves. But we didn't necessarily have the ability to make those kinds of decisions, particularly in the early part of this during the stay-at-home period when we were transitioning to safer at home. I do think that, you know, a fundamental element here was trying to balance risk and across many sectors and mitigate risk. And we were working with incomplete knowledge, both locally, but particularly as a state. If I was going to do something different, I think looking back on the spring, I would have been more forceful with the governor's office and with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment when they were frankly really tugging us around. You know, we'd be all set in one direction based on their words, and then they'd throw a curveball at us Friday afternoon usually, and we'd have to react. So I think I would assert ourselves a little bit more than I did.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, throughout my career, I've always been in a situation or it's a discipline where you critique everything you do. And the same thing is in play here. Looking back on it, I can't think of anything we would have done or should have done much differently than we did under the circumstances and armed with the knowledge that we had at the time. It's often said that a perfect plan too late is less effective than a somewhat good plan done quickly enough. We were in a crisis situation. We were in a damage control situation. We had to take decisive action. So at that time, a one-size-fits-all solution was about the best thing we could possibly do, and then work to refine it from there. And we've been constantly doing that over the last 6 months to get waivers, to get relaxations, to address each industry, each business differently so that we can try to recover and have a viable economy, but also protect the public health.
Thank you. Well, following your reminder, Keith, you're up for the next question.
That's right. Let's keep the mask down, right?
It's a burning question, my man, because it is wildfire. And any part of the county threatens health, life, and property, and the forest future. Chaffee County residents have expressed strong support for wildfire-related provisions in building codes. How should the county address this, and what might those codes include?
Something that I've suggested several times, and it's gotten me in hot water a couple of times, but is looking very carefully at what kind of materials and what kind of design elements we allow in structures in the wildland-urban interface. Every place that's had a catastrophic wildfire has gone back and revisited their codes and implemented things like fire-resistant roofing materials, soffit designs, and stricter enforcement about some things like that, because we don't want to place firefighters' lives at risk. We don't want to place the equipment and the resources at risk. And we don't want to get sued later on, because that exposes the county to financial liability. But among the other things we can do is with our programs like Healthy Forest and wildfire mitigation, we can lessen the threat of wildfire. We can also make sure that we have escape routes planned and safe havens planned when wildfire comes. Wildfire is as natural part of the landscape as snow and rain. We have to learn to deal with it.
Thank you, sir.
Could you repeat the question, Bob?
Yes. Wildfire in any part of the county threatens human health, life, and property, and the forest future. Chaffee County residents have expressed strong support for wildfire-related provisions and building codes. And I think that's the key in the question. How should the county address this, and what might those codes be?
Okay. Well, I think I would broaden building codes maybe to land use code, just so we can talk about more than just structurally about how you build a house. But I think that key elements to that, and Keith hit on many of them, but you know, when you're in that wildland urban interface, which a lot of our homes in the unincorporated parts of the counties are, we really need to be looking at defensible space needs to be a mandate, I think, going forward for HOAs. That has to be part of the equation. Looking at materials, I think, is an important element to this too. Building materials, building fire breaks and proper ingress and egress into the layout of subdivisions is really important. We already have requirements for fire cisterns on most of the subdivisions, or payment in lieu of a cistern to the fire protection districts. But I think a lot of our efforts are going to be probably more incentive-based in some regards than purely regulatory, but I think this is a really important topic, and it will be front and center when we do address the land use code.
Thank you, sir. Bonnie, let me read, it is.
No, I understand. I remember.
You got the question?
I got it.
Okay, you're up.
I'm actually a master gardener with the Chaffee County Extension, and they actually have a great program online about creating defensible space around homes and, keeping your trees trimmed, also making sure that the shrubbery that you're growing around your house isn't something that's going to catch fire. So I think homeowners, when they're building a home, they should be aware of that defendable space. And I think they need to follow the guidelines that have been put out by Colorado Extension. Some of the building materials, I think, could possibly be an environmental concern when they catch fire. So you need to put a team together to look at to make sure that you're putting something specific in a code about structural changes to homes for fire because of some of the chemicals.
Okay.
So I would not always recommend that.
Okay, bud. Thank you very much. Well, we're going to switch topics now into public health.
Got my mask down.
Oh,
I'm ready.
You're ready for it. That's right. You notice I'm just keeping mine on. I was starting to give myself an earache just putting it on top all the time. Nobody cares what my face looks like anyway, though. You guys, they want to see, genuine feeling in those faces when you do these answers. Public health. First question. Domestic violence and rape occur in Chaffee County. What programs and services do you think the county should provide or support to decrease this violence?
That's a great question and a complex question because the issues are all over the place. And then it also, you have unintended consequences, families and relocation. I think one thing that the county should consider with these is a temporary solution for where you have an incident of domestic violence to protect whoever is the injured person, in this case, children, wife, husband, whomever. They need to have a safe place to go. And a lot of it's education, having support system around for people. I would make sure that was available to anyone and that they felt safe calling that number, which is also very important. Some people don't call because they don't feel safe calling the number. So those are some things that I would do. In addition, my sister's company is thinking she works for the Griffith Center for Children, and they're looking at putting a location here to provide that type of support to families.
Thank you, Bonnie. Greg?
Okay, thanks. We have some nonprofits that focus on elements of this, like the Alliance, which is really in place to help generally women, not always, but women and children get out of these situations and into safe homes, provide all kinds of services to support them. In the case of rape, which you mentioned, Bob, we also have help from the hospital, and we have help from the Planned Parenthood down in Salida. Another entity that operates outside of our county government is Sol Vista, which is behavioral health. And a lot of these issues need to be addressed not just in the moment, but over time, and making sure that people are getting as many resources as they can to learn how to deal with their feelings and to communicate to try and avoid the violent situations. Within law enforcement, which the county sheriff's office is probably our biggest department, we need training for them to help them in these situations to de-escalate them. And then human services is also a key part of the county response to these situations.
Thank you, Greg. Keith?
Well, Bonnie and Greg mentioned some of the good ones already. I'll try to add to those in addition to Sol Vista and others. Some of these things that we see are consequences or crimes of despair, they're often called. If people are worried about their income, they're worried about shelter, they're worried about feeding their children, oftentimes that frustration manifests itself in violent behavior. I'm not excusing it, but that's just the fact. If you can treat the cause rather than the symptom, then I think you're much better off. And our Department of Human Services and Public Health do have some good programs that I think people just aren't aware of many times that could help them address those things. Ultimately, our homeless coalition, which is evolving, would like to have a homeless shelter, a transitional homeless shelter on the order of La Puente or the bridge down in Alamosa, where people can get in there and get a job, get some stability in their lives, and help prevent these problems rather than just treating them.
Thank you, sir. Still on public health, next question from one of our citizens. Access to drug treatment and mental health treatment is low in Chaffee County. As commissioner, what can you do to increase access for these areas of treatment?
One thing that we're stressing is to get better mental health funding and to get some funding to implement the governor's recently announced blueprint for mental health. It's got a great program. It's got great architecture. The problem is it's under-resourced like many other things. On the plus side of the ledger right now, Sol Vista Health is building a facility, a regional assessment center on the hospital campus at HRRMC, and it will have a detox center. It will have a lot of features that right now we don't have in Chaffee County. We have to export to other counties and pay for those either through the Sheriff's Department underwrites it, or our Department of Human Services or Public Health, depending on what kind of situation it is. But having Sol Vista there and backing them to the extent that we possibly can, and making sure that the state comes across with some funding for some of these other programs are probably the biggest things we can do as commissioners.
Thank you, sir. Right?
Yep, thanks, Bob. This is a really important issue, behavioral health and drug treatment, drug addiction. This is, I think, an important time. The next several years, we're going to see some really good developments. Keith mentioned the assessment facility that Sol Vista is putting in on the hospital campus. That will serve about a 5-county area and will really help us with treating mental health and behavioral health issues right here when they are acute, as opposed to transporting everyone to the Front Range, which is what we're currently doing. Over the last several years, we've developed a non-emergent medical transfer system with our ambulance service in the hospital. It's allowed us to staff up and have 3 ambulances always on duty instead of just 2, but because of the funding that we generate by that. And we are working through the challenges of mental health transfers. Those are really tricky. The other thing I'll say about drug treatment is that there is, as you probably know, nationwide opioid litigation going on. We're in a settlement phase right now, Colorado is, and working with our Attorney General to figure out how best to distribute those funds through the rural areas.
Okay. Bonnie?
That's another good question. Problem is that people need to feel safe. I said that statement before, to come forward, unless they get arrested for, doing something that, mental health issue or a drug issue. A lot of those people, they walk around transparent to us. We don't know who has a drug problem or a drinking problem unless they come forward and, talk about it. And to do that, usually the person needs to feel safe. So I think we need some kind of, I would put a hotline in the background where people could call to get help, where their information is completely 100% confidential, so that they would make that call, put that olive branch out there, hey, I need help. I'm admitting I need help. Where can I go? And then apparently there's a lot of locations that you can direct them to depending on the need.
Ronnie, thank you. Many County residents are older than 60. This question is important to me, so you guys have been listening. And they want to stay here. Discuss what you know are the issues and how the county can provide adequate support for those over 60 who want to stay.
I just talked to a lady in the dollar store the other day, and she was, over 60, and she and her husband were living in a trailer, and they couldn't find affordable housing, and, based with, with their existing income. So there's a lot of options out there that exist in the big giant world of what do you do with seniors. But a lot of it comes down to choice. I have said this before, that I think the COVID dynamic changed things. People don't necessarily want to be put in a nursing home or an extended care location. So I think the more options that are available to seniors that fit within their budget, and where they can, for example, I said, have people, living in a house, but you could have multiple seniors, living, and they have a common space and a common place to watch TV, to cook, etc. As a potential option, was someone that would come in and help them, like a helping hands or visiting angels. So there's some things out there, but.
Thanks. Greg?
Sure. So Chaffee County has twice as many people over age 60, as the state average, and our average age is 12 years older than the state average. Aging in place is going to be a huge issue as our whole population continues to age here, and we do need to work on ways to create that continuum of care. I was at a meeting last week with the folks from the hospital and economic development, and actually the folks that did the Collegiate Commons Project, Urban Inc., talking about, is there a way to pull independent living, assisted living, and more of a nursing home type environment all together into one continuum, maybe in one location partially and maybe not. Trying to figure out the economics of that is challenging. This is not something that like a county or even a hospital should embark on. You really need to bring in the pros. And for most of our term, we thought there was such a plan underway in Poncha Springs that seems to have fallen by the wayside. So we're looking at other options to try and recreate that same solution.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Bob. Great question. Like similar to the previous question, there are a lot of resources there. I think one of the problems is awareness, but we still need additional programs. For example, many of our elderly people are veterans. We have a veteran service office which offers a VA transport shuttle down to the VA hospital for people who have service-related problems. Our Chaffee shuttle provides non-emergency medical transport for people to go to and from the hospital or to and from medical appointments if they need that. Chaffee Helping Hands can help with certain things, can help with housing modifications. I know that some of that has been done. The Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments has a housing modification program if somebody needs a ramp or needs rails or needs something like that installed. Greg mentioned our desire to have a transitional housing facility and age in place program. That is something with our multi-jurisdictional housing authority and some of the other programs that we've established, we can really take an assertive approach to establishing. And then finally, geriatric care, improving that at our hospital and our healthcare facilities.
Thanks, Greg.
Keith. He's Greg, I'm Keith.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, you guys get your masks on.
No, it's the masks.
We can tell who's the aging person.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's switch to business. A significant portion of our economic health is based in tourism and recreational use, which has impacted our landscape and our watershed health. Some people feel they're being loved to death. So here's the question. How do you feel about this? And what specifically would you do to address this controversial issue?
Well, I have to agree that I do feel many times that we're loving it to death, and that's a real quandary for me to be in, having been in the outdoor retail business and being an outdoors athlete and really enjoying outdoor recreation my entire life. And one of the reasons I'm here, I think we made a big step for our community commitment when we established the Chaffee Common Ground Fund. And one of the three pillars of that is trying to mitigate the impacts of outdoor recreation. We've got several programs under there, Recreation in Balance and some other things. And then many of our volunteer organizations can apply for grant funding to support improvements for infrastructure, pit toilets, latrines, what have you, at trailheads and other places right now where we don't have them, and the impacts of human waste and other things are really taking a toll on those. And then finally, continuing to push our legislative agenda to get adequate funding for our land management agencies and adequate personnel resources for our land management agencies so that they can do a better job at what they're really tasked with doing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Right? What do we do about loving this place to death.
Sure. Well, it's a real issue. We know that. Anyone who's lived here long has seen a lot of change in terms of the visitation. We're now seeing as many as 100,000 people attempting to summit just the 14ers in Chaffee County alone each year. So it is a big deal, but I think we are taking good steps to address it. Our community voted to support funding this, as Keith mentioned, through the Common Ground program. And then parallel to that, coming out of Envision, we've developed the Recreation and Balance program, and they are working on a community recreation resource protection plan. So it's kind of like our community wildfire protection plan that would kind of create big strategic solutions, but also sort of tactical, urgent solutions that need to be addressed. And we have the concurrence and support from our public land management agencies. They want to work with this group. So groups like Friends of 4 Mile, TU, Garna, been doing some of this work for a long time. This is sort of bringing them together under an umbrella and with the clear support of the feds and state land management agencies. So I think we're making progress.
Thank you, Greg. Bonnie?
Well, I kind of mentioned I was in transportation and logistics, and there's a lot of trucks that leave out of here empty. And I think also the recreational aspect of the community leads to severe gullies and arches. You know, during the summer, everything's busy. You can't sit at a table and can't find anything in the grocery stores. And then there's the lag times, you know, in between the seasons where there's, you know, where it's a struggle for businesses to stay in place. So I think we need to, I would look at creating jobs somehow or another. I mean, this area used to be a big lettuce growing place. Why don't we set up a building to grow lettuce and ship that out on the trucks? Perhaps meat, we have all the Angus beef, start a community with the cattlemen and ship beef out of here, maybe start up a lumber plant with all the trees that are dead. I mean, there's a lot of different options, and I think the community could do well with some type of business besides recreation related.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you. Well, one of those things we're going to do with business in this town. Here you go.
Okay. Oops, I missed my cue.
How do you propose Chaffee County go about funding increased recycling and sustainable effort, even knowing the market for recycling products is shrinking?
I know, and some of the recycling companies are struggling. They're not making enough money because, you know, and plus you've got people throwing stuff in there that shouldn't really be tossed in. So it's increasing their costs of separating and actually recycling. I would have to look at some experts on recycling, what can be done, and also take a look at what they're doing with the products right now with the recycling material. Are they hauling it out of here on their own trucks? Could they be putting it on other trucks? You know, some way to lower their cost, try to make that, to help them operate a little more efficiently before taking a step, you know, like penalizing the citizenry with some costs, when maybe there could be efficiencies gained in the process.
Okay, thank you. Recycling, Greg.
Recycling is a real challenge, especially in a remote area like this. It doesn't pay. Many of the things that we're recycling right now, we are subsidizing those efforts with the elements that do pay, but we're subsidizing the entire effort with our Angel Chavano recycling program. It's countywide to the tune, well, we just received a proposal from them for an increase in the subsidy. So we're getting up to a pretty significant chunk of change that we're paying for this. When you divvy it out across the population though, you're probably looking at maybe $5 or $6 a person to have the kind of recycling coverage that we do. And so I personally am in favor of supporting the subsidized recycling with the drop locations throughout the county. Our landfill has about 90 more years of lifespan in it, according to our landfill engineer. We're not in a crisis mode, but we do need to be looking ahead and finding ways to reduce the amount of material going in there each year. And it's a big topic.
Okay, down to you.
Yes, this is one of the follow-on questions from our forum the other night, and our answers are on the Ark Valley Voice. If you want to find them on there, they're much more thorough than we can do here. But in the past, we heard the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Well, in the past few years, there have been 2 additional R's added to that. On the front end, there's refuse, which is to try to minimize the amount of material that we're using in packaging, marketing materials, and things like that. And then on the back end is rot. Make sure that whatever we do get is biodegradable, and when it does go into the landfill, it can fairly quickly dissolve. One of the things that we did is we bought a grinder, came from Austria. That's where all these big grinders come from, is Europe, to try to reduce the volume of what's going into the landfill. Because as much as I love recycling, it's not a long-term solution. We really have to work on longer-term answers.
Thank you, sir. Well, again, these questions are coming all from, reminder, from ones that folks submitted online. They're all from people in Chaffee County. Most of them, I think, are familiar, especially this next one. On housing, Chaffee County struggles with providing and supporting jobs and affordable housing. Continues to be a significant problem. What new ideas do you have to help remedy these problems? Sir.
Well, I'd like to take credit for the idea. It isn't mine, but there are people who are working on it, and I'm certainly happy to help them sponsor it. It's called, what we used to call vocational technical education. It's now called career technical education. And these are trades and things like welding and body repair for automobiles and mechanics and construction and things of that nature. I think with CMC now having a permanent presence here and a more robust presence in Salida, that we have an opportunity to have a cooperative arrangement with them. We probably don't have enough young people. We don't have enough high school students or rooftops to have a regional technical college here, but we can have a cooperative arrangement with CMC. So that brings some jobs that are well paying. They have upward mobility, and they're not tourism based. And so they also have an opportunity to branch out and build your own business from there. So by increasing those incomes, increasing livelihoods, that's another way to make housing more affordable.
Thank you, Keith. Greg?
Okay, thanks, Bob. I think focusing on the housing side of this question and equation, I think we need to do everything we can to find ways to incentivize the private sector or the market to address the challenges that we face. We're not going to be able to just build subsidized housing. We're not in an urban environment in the first place that can really handle that kind of density. But looking at deed restrictions and deed restricted housing, inclusionary housing, density or utility incentives for developers who include affordable housing. And we need to get, I think, more creative with our land use code and our building code. And I think this is going to be a real challenge, because I think it's easy to say, I want more affordable housing here. And then it's easy to turn around and say, yeah, but I don't want my neighbor to have an accessory dwelling unit that has somebody else living in it. Or I don't want to see something that looks anything like a trailer park down the road, or that kind of thing. So we're going to have to address this as a community, just like we do every other tough question, and find the balance there.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, big subject, 1 minute answer. What have you got?
Okay.
Affordable housing.
Well, I also agree with affordable means getting to your job, not only paying your rent, it means your electric, your gas, your internet, etc. And more people now are working remotely because of COVID, and I'm not 100% confident that the working world as we live it will ever be the same. And per Keith's comment, I think if the Colorado Mountain College offered programs such as computing, communication, things that they could do online and work from home so they would not have that transportation cost, I think it would in fact make housing a little more affordable. So there's a lot of things you can do with, when you're working out of the home, where you don't have to necessarily go to an office or a job, pay for extra clothes for work, et cetera. When you bundle that all together, going to a job every day can be very expensive and costly. So I'd recommend education and training.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next 3 questions are going to be about something we're all grounded in, and that's land use. Okay. The First question. In Colorado, there are many different approaches to land use planning for subdivisions and minimizing lot sizes. In Chaffee County, land use planning for development and preservation of scenic and agricultural lands is an extremely controversial issue. Isn't the question yet? A little background. Question is, please discuss what you feel would be appropriate to balance economic and preservation needs with private property rights.
Okay, good question. I looked at the current comprehensive plan. I've read the, the ordinances and the code. I think it's, you have to, so a developer comes in and they want to build this. What does the community want? Mega million houses? Or do you want land use with small pieces on them? Right now, the current plan is looking at moving, affordable housing to areas such as Nathrop and over in Maysville, which I think is too far away for people to commute to a job every day. And then if you look at some things, is it an architectural issue or is it beauty? In the eye of the beholder. Like, I love my house. This is what I want. Do you force people into a bucket, or do you leave it somewhat open for, I don't know, that's a tough one.
It was a long question, so if you'll forgive me, Greg, I'm going to repeat part of it.
Perfect.
Okay? There's information about there which I think you guys have had to deal with know well. But the question is, what do you feel is an appropriate balance, economic and preservation needs with private property rights?
Sure. Well, I think we've been taking some big steps in that direction as a result of Envision Chaffee County and the Common Ground program, and also really talking to our agricultural producers who who own a lot of that really scenic land that we all value so much, the valley bottom and those green hay meadows. I think that the way you approach this is more from a incentive-based and a supporting-based approach than a regulatory. We need to help agriculture be successful as a business, and we need to offer them incentives to protect and preserve their land. 90% of the ranchers surveyed in the county said that was their goal, was to keep their land in agriculture. We need to figure out how to help them do that. We did a series of conservation easements through Common Ground right down the center of the valley, from down by Stonebridge right up to the top of Browns Canyon. And those were all willing buyer, willing seller conservation easements. So I think working with incentive type approaches with private property is much better than regulatory approaches.
Thank you. Great. Keith, big subject.
Yeah, I too generally favor incentives, but at the same time, you have to have the other side of the coin that does have some regulatory guidance so that people who are thinking about moving into the valley or thinking about buying a certain property with a certain intent in mind know where to look and know whether or not that property is going to be available for the kind of development that they want or what else they might want to do with it. The bumper sticker statement for everything is keep the town, town, and country, country. So what we want to do, what we want our land use codes to do as a result of the comp plan update and what have you, is to more forcefully incentivize things so that affordable housing is located in the existing municipalities, and so that the county does zoning and density adjacent to the municipalities so that they can extend services out there, drive construction costs down, and make housing more affordable immediately adjacent to those.
Thank you. And on that subject, land use, should the county's land use codes contribute to protecting wildlife species, including breeding areas and movement corridors, as well as preserving open space, historic buildings, and agricultural lands in Chaffee County? A little bit of a complex question. Do I need to read it again?
No.
Okay. Took me a minute to understand it when I saw it the first time.
No.
For you.
My answer to that is yes, and for two reasons. One, that's what the community has continued to say for many years now. If you go back and look at the original comprehensive plan from the 70s, walk it on up through the one that we're currently operating under, which was signed in February of 2000 based on work that was done in 1997. If you look at the land use roundtable that was done in the aughts, if you look at Envision and you look at this comprehensive plan update, they all put a high value on open space, our ag lands, wildlife, aquifer recharge, all those elements. So it's the community that's saying that's what they want. And that's why I think it should have a high premium on it. The fact that I also agree with it doesn't really matter because it's the community's comprehensive plan, it's the community's land use code that we're working on developing.
Thank you, sir.
Could you repeat the question part of it there, Bob?
Some of it was just info up front and then,
Yeah.
okay, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Okay. In Colorado, oh, here we go. Should the county's land use codes contribute to protecting wildlife species, including breeding areas, movement corridors, and open spaces, historic buildings, agricultural lands, all in Chaffee County? So the question is really about land use codes for the county.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're getting at here is, should the land use code seek to support values besides simply development?
Yes, sir.
And protecting those? And the answer is absolutely yes. I'm going to focus on the wildlife part of that question. We are really reaching a tipping point, I think, in terms of preserving our migration corridors and our severe winter range. That is absolutely critical to the survival of our large game, the big game, the deer, elk, antelope, and now moose, bighorn sheep. And so we are going to have to address this more forcefully. Part of it is when we have land use applications, we go out to consulting agencies. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is one of those. Historically, their response has been fairly mild. You know, like, here's some things you might want to think about with this land use application. I've been really leaning on our area wildlife manager to speak more, be more forthright. When he feels something's really at risk, he needs to speak up and make it clear to us so we can try to work around that. That's his job and that's our job.
Thank you, Greg. Bonnie, should I repeat that? That's kind of a complex piece.
No, it's
Okay.
fine, thank you.
What do you think?
I think the answer is yes to that question. And I think that I would make sure that someone from the Wildlife Division is taking a look at at the land use proposals. When a developer comes in and wants to build something, I would, make sure that someone from that group is looking at that application and making sure that there would be no impact to the wildlife. And if there was an impact, that the developer should reconsider maybe making changes to not keep the wildlife population from being injured or harmed.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. And I'm just going to do we have one more question. Go down that way. Okay, here we go. Last question on land. What do you think are the most important points made by the Envision process for land use in this area and in this valley? What will you do to ensure that the recommendations made by the Envision process are implemented in a timely way?
I actually like this particular document. I wish it was done every year. I kind of consider it as what we call a KPI, key performance indicator. And I think it could be changed slightly to be a key performance indicator that could be given to the population every year to say, hey, here's the areas that are important to you, and here's what our score is today, and here's how it's changed. Because it would be a very good document for commissioners to use when they're in their decision-making process to make sure that they're hitting those topics that are most important to the population and the citizens.
Thank you. Greg?
Well, it's a really big question, Bob, but I think a key part of that pertains to agriculture. During the envision process, we met with most of the major landowning agricultural families in the valley. And as I mentioned earlier, 90% of them said, I want this land to stay in agriculture. And ideally, I want it to stay in my own family, to leave it to my descendants. When we did our survey of 1,500 residents, we found that 97% of the respondents to that survey agreed that agriculture, both the values it represents and the ecological values that are generated, and as well as scenic, were of importance to the respondents, and that they wanted to see agriculture succeed. They might not understand all the ins and outs of the business, but they knew that preserving what we think of as our valley floor landscape and all those ecological benefits that accrue from irrigated agriculture, we're going to have to see agriculture be successful. And so we have to find ways to support them, both as a economically in a business sense and from a land preservation sense.
Thank you, Craig. Keith?
In many respects, we've already capitalized on Envision because we used a lot of the Envision work as the foundation for the comprehensive plan update. As great as Envision was and is and will continue to be, without a comprehensive plan, without translating that into meaningful codes and additional programs, then Envision would just kind of be a nice project. There were lots of people who were reluctant to get involved in some of these things because over the years, there hadn't been the carry through that they wanted to see. I think with Envision, we showed that carry through by doing things like Common Ground, the Community Foundation, and others, and now those have flowed on into the comprehensive plan. We're continuing to work on values like keeping our ag lands in production agriculture, like protecting our heritage and our physical structures, the Heritage Museum, Historic St. Elmo, our schoolhouses, and others. And it needs to be an ongoing process. Like Bonnie says, it shouldn't just be lurches and fits and starts as it has been over the years. It needs to be an ongoing conversation that people are involved in.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Some great conversation here. We really appreciate what we've heard. And we're going to close up with your final thoughts on this. We'll go in the reverse order as we did in the introductory statements. And I think they have 1 minute. Is that correct? 1 minute for each. Okay, Bonnie, you're up first.
Lucky me. Well, everyone, I want to thank you very much for hosting this event. It was very great. I enjoyed many of the questions. I am never worked in government. This would be a new adventure for me. I have worked for companies, for a large company for the last 28 years. The experience the experience I bring to the conversation is data analytics. I'm a data-driven person, and I think that a lot of decisions that the commissioners make need to be based on decisions and what data and what the people want. And I think I could offer a lot of help in that particular area. So I'm hoping that people will consider me when they vote this November.
Thank you, Bonnie. Keith, 1 minute, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm Keith Baker. I have no further ambitions, no higher ambitions than serving as one of your county commissioners. Therefore, every day when I get up, my every effort is dedicated to the betterment of the residents of Chaffee County. I'm a very purpose-driven person. I'm a very values-driven person. The three values that really animate me in this job every day are building community, preserving our heritage, and preparing for the future. We know there are certain things coming, and the earlier we start preparing for them, the better prepared we'll be when the time comes. I'll continue to do my utmost, the best of my ability, to do my best every day for the betterment of everybody in Chaffee County, to do a great job today and do even better tomorrow. Asking for your vote is a tough thing to do sometimes, but I need it. I want to stay in this job because I'm prepared to do the work, and I humbly ask for your vote in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Final thoughts.
Sure. So I'm unopposed in this election. And so like it or not, you're stuck with me. But That being said, though, I really do, I humbly ask for your vote, and I hope that you will check that box next to my name. You don't have to. I hope you will, because I hope that you are aware that whether you agree with all the decisions that I've made or we've made over the last 3.5 years, that you will agree that we've tried hard. I'm really glad I hit the ground running back in 2017. Spent 2.5 years doing a lot of what I thought was really productive, really useful stuff. I got a huge list of accomplishments that I'm not going to try to read, but I'm glad I got going on that early because I couldn't foresee the Decker fire. I couldn't foresee COVID-19. We're going to have a lot of challenges ahead. I think this is a weird time to change horses, honestly, and midstream. And I can just assure you that I am dedicated to giving this my full attention as I have the last 3.5 years. And again, I hope you'll check that box next to my name when you vote soon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And I'll take advantage of getting the last word in and just say thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here. Been excellent conversation. I think we have learned a lot and had some terrific insight into not only some of the issues that we've got here, but you're thinking about it. And to that end, I really want to thank the folks that submitted these. All these questions were from our Chaffee County citizens. So thank you, folks, and thanks for being here tonight.
Actually, I'm going to get the last word.
No.
I also want to thank Keith, Greg and Bonnie for being here. I want to thank all those who have been watching this live tonight. And it's also going to be available on the League of Women Voters of Chaffee County website, lwvchaffeecounty.org. We'll be on there soon. And not only will the Zoom portion be on it, but we've also been recording tonight. And so we'll have a close-ups of the candidates as they were speaking. I'd also like to thank Bob Box for moderating tonight, Mary Helen Dunn, our timekeeper, Jim Osborne for videoing, Libby Fay for being our #1 substitute, but luckily not used. And especially we'd like to thank Ben Idle of the BV Rec for helping us out with the technical aspects tonight. And with that, we're going to close. And all you, I'm sorry, I had one more thing. I wanted to, some of you came on late and perhaps didn't hear early on that I had an email from Hannah today. I'm going to read it to y'all. I must apologize as I had some family stuff come up that I had to leave town to deal with. I won't be able to make the forum tonight. I'm hoping to be home tomorrow for the debate. I'm glad I got to do the forum last week. Thank you, Hannah. And for your information, and that's why she was not able to be with us tonight. That's all, and thank you very much for virtually attending. And hopefully next year we'll have an in-person forum right here. Thanks a lot. Good night.